agency.
Hi everybody, my name is Robert. I work for a company called DroneX and Helix Charters. We have a drone training school in Cape Town, Durban and Gauteng, where we train pilots to become commercial operators. But then we have our own operation as well for drones, as well as for agricultural helicopter spraying. I've been in aviation since, well, now next month it will be 3 years. Before that, I used to be a fruit exporter and had a major change in my life. But the company that I work for has been around since 2011 with the aviation industry. We started with simulators. We've done fixed wing and helicopter training for agriculture, for manned pilots. And in 2017, we started with drone training in Cape Town and worked from there. Yeah, that's about me. Let's get to the presentation. If I can make sure that now I'm the one is that working? Can you guys see it?
Yes, Rob.
Cool. Okay. So Simon's asked me to talk about what are the regulations and the legal challenges around using drones in a private and commercial perspective. Regulations have been around since 2015, and they're basically three parts to being a legal commercial drone operator. You have to have a pilot's license for the pilot itself. You need to you have to have your drone registered, and that gives you an airworthiness certificate. Same as your aircraft has to be airworthy. This is almost like your car license, but for an aircraft. And then you have to have a company operating certificate. It's a company license that we have to go through. We're going to go through it a little bit more later on exactly how it works. For private use, when can I fly as a private pilot or hobbyist? Hobbyists don't need a license, and they're able to fly their drones within the laws. And these laws are they're not allowed to fly for any money or remuneration or accommodation or anything that can be seen as you are getting something because you're flying. It's technical, but that is what they say. We can't fly 50 meters closer to people, buildings or roads. We can fly an RV loss. An RV loss is it's a technical thing. It's called restricted visual line of sight. And basically what it means is you're allowed to fly your drone to the height of you're allowed to fly the drone as high as the highest obstacle within 300 meters of the drone. So if you're flying next to a mountain, you can fly as high as the mountain as long as the drone is within 300 meters of the obstacle and the drone are within 300 meters of each other, and the point below that has to be within 500 meters of the pilot. You cannot fly as a hobbyist further than 500 meters from yourself, and that's 500 meters to the left and then 500 meters to the right, to the front and to the back. So it's a radius of 500 meters from the pilot. You must be able to see the drone at all times. You shouldn't be flying where you can't see the drone and you're only flying on the screen. So if something had to go, you should be able to put your eyes on the drone and fly it back to where it came from. If you can stick within those, you do not need a license and you'll be able to work legally. If you want to work outside of those parameters, this is where the legal side comes in. It's called Part 101. In America, they talk about Part 107, but we in South Africa talk about the Part 101, which is specifically to drones. Just on that point, those people that say you don't have to register your drone if you buy a DJI Mavic Mini because it's under the 249 grams, that is not applicable to South Africa. That's an American law and not anything to do with South African law at this time. Anyway, we got the cars and the cats. The cars over here is the regulations, and these are the technical standards. The regulations come through from the National Gazette, it goes through Parliament, becomes a legal law of the country. Where the technical standards, this is helping the industry to understand and be legal within the regulation. This is written by Parliament, and this is written by the CAA as a guideline of the regulations to become 100% compliant. If we have to change the laws, the regulations, it has to go through Parliament, and it's a very long-winded thing. But if we wanted to change the technical standards, it's done by the CAA, and therefore we only have to go through them, and can be a much shorter process to change the technical standards. Quickly, some definitions. If you start in the industry, I'm sure you guys must have jargon that only you guys understand. We have the same. Some of it is not that hard, but if you're starting to talk to drone people, they might start talking like this. South Africa, we talk about an RPAS in legal terms, which is a remotely piloted aircraft system, aka drone, aka UAV. There's a whole bunch of them. Legally in South Africa, we talk about RPAS, but most of us in normal terms talk about a drone as the way forward. And that can be anything from a helicopter, a fixed wing, a multi-rotor, quadcopter, hexacopter, octocopter, doesn't matter. They all form part of that remotely piloted aircraft system. The RPL, it's the license that the pilot gets. It's a personal license in your personal name. It doesn't matter who paid for it. It doesn't matter where you did it. Robert Britz, he has a license, and that is mine. If I go work for somebody else, at the moment I'm flying for 3 ROCs, and it's all under one license because it's my personal license. ROC is a RPAS operating certificate. RPAS again, our drone operating certificate. This is the certificate to say from a business perspective we're allowed to work. I'm going to bring it back quickly to a taxi industry, which makes a bit more sense. The taxi industry, we need a taxi operating certificate, business license to be able to ride taxis. Then we need to have registered taxis, and then we need a PDP driver to drive the taxi. This is our ROC is our taxi operating certificate, business license. We need an air service license as well, and that comes from the Minister of Transport, but only certain people need it, and we'll get to that just now. That's basically to the government saying you are allowed to do services, and the ROC we get from the CAA. An RLA is a remote letter of approval. This is my airworthiness certificate. So my drone then gets registered, and every year I have to pay a licensing fee to make sure that my drone is airworthy. That's the RLA. We spoke about RVLOS just now, restricted visual line of sight, up to the point of any object within 300 meters of the drone. So that is standard. With VLOS, we have to be, which is visual line of sight, it says that we can fly 500 meters away, same as the RVLOS, up to 500 meters, but we now can fly up to 120 meters or 400 foot for visual line of sight, which gives us the ability to fly above those objects. If we wanted to fly to 300 meters and there was an object there, then we could fly up to the 300 meter height, and then we just revert back to the RVLOS. Extended visual line of sight, or EVLOS, that's where we can fly up to 1 kilometer. We need to have an observer at 500 meters, which then takes over the observation, but then we can fly a longer distance in the EVLOS. Most ROCs are using EVLOS, VLOS, RVLOS as their main categories of flying. And then the golden boy at the bottom here is called BVLOS, which is what everybody wants. And that's where you want to be able to fly further than the 1 kilometer or EVLOS, or actually just fly without having to look at the drone. Because this is visual line of sight, visual line of sight, visual line of sight, and beyond visual line of sight. So we're not keeping our eyes on the drone, and we're only flying it via the camera and the telemetry between ourselves and the drone, and making sure that we don't have accidents. Cool. Commercial pilot's license, what is the RPL? License issued by the CAA, and it has to go through a training organization. It's called the ATO or RTO, and it is, we train the pilots according to the laws from the CAA. You have to be 18 years old because it's a commercial license to fly commercially. You have to have a valid Class 3 flight medical is required. It's over the top. You can't fly commercial air. This is the same as being an air hostess or a flight controller in the aircraft. We have to have these medicals. It's way over the top, but unfortunately, it's the law and it is required from us. The next part that we need to have for our RPL is the restricted radio license. And the restricted radio license is our ability to use a radio with a specific airband that speaks to aircraft. So it's 118 to 132 or something like that. I can't remember the exact bandwidth. And this gives us all that terminology that they have to speak. It gives us all understanding of airspace, how to create the flight plans. All of those things comes with the restricted radio license. I want to say that this is probably one of the hardest parts of the RPL is your restricted radio license. Most manned pilots that get this, we do the same license as a private pilot. He's done 4 to 6 months of flying before he goes and writes his exam. We give you a 2-day course and then you study, and then you go write the exam. But the big thing is, 90% of what we learned is almost irrelevant to drones, but we have to have the license again by law. So we do have a lot of learning to do, but we make sure that once you have the license, you understand the radio part that is very important to what we do. Once issued, the license is valid for 2 years and will be renewed thereafter. It doesn't have to be renewed immediately. You can renew it up to 3 years after it has been lapsed without having to redo the course. But it is every 24 months that you need to have a renewal. From the drone side, any drone that is used for commercial operations must be registered in the name of the organization, the ROC. It must have that letter of approval, the RLA, to confirm that the RPAS is serviceable for operations, for commercial operations. That RLA is valid for 12 months and needs to be renewed before that period is up. And it takes about 3 weeks to get a renewal. So you need to do it within a valid time period. If we have a look, this is a business license for the drone, and that's why it's 12 months. Where the pilot license is a personal license and they give us it for 2 years. So definitely, the way I remember it, if it's personal, it's 2 years. If it's business, it's 1 year. The ROC or the RPAS operating certificate, it's issued to a company. Application for an ROC is done with the CAA or the Civil Aviation Organization. An air service license is only necessary for a commercial ROC, and we're going to talk about it just now. However, when you apply for a corporate ROC, we do not require air service license. Corporate ROCs, companies that only do work for themselves and don't source out their services. So if you are working in a forestry environment and the forestry company would like to only work on their terrain, their forests, doing management of their work and not selling their services to other people, they would only need a corporate ROC. The air service license is the problem that makes it really difficult to get an ROC at the moment. I'm going to quickly jot through the commercial because I think most people are going to go corporate, but just for those that want to know, for a commercial ROC, we need an air service license from the Department of Transport. The problem is government organizations are very slow. This can take anything between 12 and 24 to 30, in 36 months to get your air service license. extremely slow process. And with our situation with SAA and the whole aviation industry at the moment, the Air Service Council is snowed under with work, and our little RSC air service licenses are taking even longer than they did before. It's a 5-phase process with the CAA to get your RSC, and that we can work through with you if you require more detail. And that's when you are operating, when an operator is going to do work for other people or other companies for commercial gain. It's the only time you need this commercial RSC. Persons in the organization, so we need some post holders, needs to be a CEO, needs to be a safety manager, he has to do some safety courses. There's got to be a quality manager, he's got to do some quality courses. There's an operations manager that makes sure the day-to-day running of the drones and the flights and things like that. He has to have an RPL, a license. RPAS manager, the guy that looks after the maintenance of the drones, he has to also have had an RPL, or have had an RPL. And then the pilots themselves, they need to have an RPL. They need to have at this stage a dangerous good category 10 training. It's a 1-day course. And then aviation security or AVSEC training, which is again another 1-day course. Quickly look at the corporate RSC, which is I think what a lot of commercial forestry companies would look at. They do not require this air service license. So they cut that whole portion out, which dramatically reduces. And the rest of it can be done within 12 months. So that makes it a lot easier for people to go down that way. People that have got corporate RSCs, the first one that ever came out was Anglo-American, and they only flew their mines. But we have EMS rescue, municipalities, government organizations, people that utilize drones for themselves. And I would like to add forestry companies to that as well. The operations, the people and responsibilities, the post holders are exactly the same. The training is exactly the same as a commercial RSC. The only difference is this dreaded air service license at this stage. I'm going to skip over quickly questions because we're running out of time. I'm going to quickly go through this and then we can ask the questions at the end if that's all right. Getting your RPL. As mentioned, before the pilot requires the following: he must be 18, he must have a class 3 flight medical, and he must do a restricted radio license. We get 3 categories. Bruce touched on them just now. Aeroplane or fixed wing license. You get a helicopter license. Very few people have got helicopters. I think I only know of one person in South Africa, and none of the schools are training helicopters because of the advancement of multi-rotor aircraft. That is the most popular license to get. Once you got that, sometimes people will get an aeroplane rating or aeroplane license as well. The training comprises of a few things. You got to do a theory training as per the regulations. This is the CATS law that we got to fulfill. Don't worry about it. And the subjects are air law, principles of flight, aircraft technical, human factors, navigation, meteorology, and flight planning. Part of that training, we also do a restricted radio license exams with the CAA. That's the only theoretical external exam that you have to go and do, where you go to a CAA center and you then write your 2 exams that you have to do with the CAA. The rest we are able to do internally in our company. Practical training has to be at a registered CAA field. So we have one in the Bluff, and that is registered. If we wanted to get one in Pietermaritzburg, we'd have to get the CAA to come out and relook at it and do the registration of that field. Not that many people are going to come and check on us, but we do have to have registered training fields around. The final exam is done by a DER, which is a designated remote examiner. It's a CAA approved RPAS examiner. And that's made up of, we're going to get to that just now, before I now jump the thing. The practical training teaches you to fly in total control of the drone. We disconnect the GPS drone, and this creates an unstable drone. Controlling the drone is then totally in control of the pilot. The wind blows the drone around, you have to fly against the wind to hold it there. Lessons vary between 3 and 10 to achieve the required skill level to be able to fly without that GPS in it. Some people snap it very easily, some people take a few more lessons. The biggest one is not when you're flying it with tail in where the battery's looking at you. It's where you turn it 90 and 180 degrees around. Then all the controls you have are different to what you normally have. The practical test is never how you really fly. We all fly in GPS mode because that creates stability in the drone and the precision data that we require, spraying it on a certain line, taking photos with longitude, latitude, height data, GPS data. So those are all what we need to do. But for when an emergency arises and the pilot's ability to control these drones with these skills is highly required. I've had a drone fly away with a GPS broke 4 times on me, and I still haven't lost a drone because I have that flight skill to be able to do the right thing in emergencies. Part of the practical lessons at DroneX, we recap the theory portion and highlight specific things that are important for the final exams. We also then work on an operations manual. It's our paperwork to be able to fly. It can be long and tedious, but that's unfortunately the law that we work around. For our final exam, you must have done a whole bunch of things before you get there. You must have passed your medical. You must have a language proficiency to say that you can speak English. You must have passed the theory phase of the training, have achieved the restricted radio license, and achieved the practical skill level to be able to fly that drone in a skillful manner. You must have completed that field operations manual, that paperwork for the day, what detail you need to know and put on for the job that you're going to do. And then DroneX, we do what is called a letter of recommendation. Not everybody does it. This comes out of manned aviation, where we flew, where we taught people to fly helicopters and airplanes. And this is a mock exam with our chief flight instructor. And he comes in and he goes through a mock exam with you so that you know what to expect. And that DroneX knows that when we put your name forward for the exam, that we're 100% comfortable that you are ready to write your exam. What happens on the day of the exam? There's an oral phase. This is where the examiner chats to the pilot and tests his knowledge on theory components of the RPL. About 90 minutes. They talk air law, they talk airspace, they talk radio work, they talk batteries, they talk your flight operations manual. The field operations manual becomes a big part of it. And this is the examiner wants to know, do you know enough about drone law and the drone process to be able to be a safe operator for the drone outside of, in the real world? And then the final exam flight, you do all the maneuvers we taught you in the practical training, and it lasts about 15 minutes in total. When you want to work under an RPL, the pilot needs to have under an ROC, the pilot is required to have an RPL for the category of aircraft, aeroplane, helicopter, or multi-rotor. There are other ratings that are required. So the BV loss, you need to go and do a whole new course to be able to fly BV loss, to be able to have that on your license. And then those of you that are wanting to do spraying, there's a spraying rating called a PCO, which is a pest control operator license. And that is the license to be able to spray pesticides or fertilizer from an aircraft. It's a 6-month, it's a 5-day course that you attend, and then a 6-month internship to get that license. We're struggling at this stage to find people that would help us with the 6-month internship, because there's not enough information to say you need 20 hours or you need 5 hours or you need 6 months full-time every day. Nobody actually knows exactly what it is. And a lot of guys that have this spraying rating aren't really interested in letting other people work under them, because it potentially could take business away from them. So we're trying to ask the CAA to give us more clarity. At this stage, they don't really know exactly what they want. We need that dangerous goods, that AVSEC training. The ROC needs to do a background check on me and a criminal record check every 24 months. What they see doesn't necessarily mean that I can't work for them if there's bad stuff there. But the company has to know about it and note that they are aware of whatever comes up from the background in the criminal record check. Proficiency check, that's just a flight check with the ROC every 6 months. Our ROC says I have to fly with all my pilots every 6 months to make sure that they are still 100% confident to be able to fly and react to emergencies. The ROC, we got to do an induction training with our pilots, and that is to tell you what my specific ROC manual says. What are the procedures? How do we work? What do we do for those specific, for our specific manual? And then there are other courses that are obvious that you can do, not required at this stage, but it helps pilots. An operational procedure course. How do you practically go out and work? We've now taught you to fly maneuvers for the test, but when you go out and do practical work, how can we help you to get the best results from your job? If you want to fly in controlled airspace, there's certain training that has to happen there. And then there's software training, specifically surveying, photography, volumetrics. There was a spray drone, the DJI Agres, the DJI Terra is quite a different program to most other DJIs, so you might want training on that. And it is that, yes. Okay, so what have I done in forestry? I've done with the nature conservation, slightly different to maybe what you're doing. We did this alien, first of all, what can we do? I think 2D orthomosaics, flat maps of areas, useful for planning, identification of trees, roads, things like that, definitely can come in. Tree counting, there are different softwares that can be used with AI and manual to count the number of trees that you have in a stand and work out their heights, work out the volume of timber. Definite advantages in the planning phase for clearing new areas to tree, doing road planning, all of those. Drone deploy, Cirrus Imaging, Pictara, Agrimo, they all have the ability to help us with a lot of that. And a lot of them are aimed at forestry and farming. So those are the two categories that they're working, because they see that this is something that they work on. 3D modeling, we've got a road planning, new stands, all of those are things that forestry could use. I haven't even added in here, like with Britz, spraying and things like that. Definitely it's something that we can work on. DroneX and Cape Nature, we did an alien vegetation clearing in the Jonkershoek Mountains. We utilized the drone to survey the entire mountain in the Franschhoek areas. We utilized the images from the drone to develop a flat map of the mountain and we sent that to Agrimo, which is our online cloud AI service. Agrimo then issued a report with files that give the number of trees as well as their GPS location. This will be able to put into a meta-shaped files and able to bring into the Cape Nature's system to be able to see exactly where the trees are. We could have run ports of how much biomass reports, then done comparison with previous years and all those things like that. That's not what they wanted. They wanted an image like this. This was their sector that they were talking about. We flew the whole image. It was quite a tricky flight because it is 1,000-meter elevation from ground to or height from the bottom corner all the way to the top of the mountains. We actually did it over 4 different flights to moving higher and higher up the mountain to be able to get the definition of the trees that we knew what we were doing and getting the best thing. In this sector here, each red dot is a pine tree, and that's 1,887 pine trees that were in that are there. We were able to then go in afterwards and fly, and these trees are everything from 0.5 meter high to 4 meter high trees, and they were able to identify all of those trees with the data that was being pulled from here. Last slide. Who are we? Well, we're a training organization. This is our CAA training number for 0420. We're able to offer training to RPLs, issued the training school. DroneX has offered training since 2017. We moved to the drone environment. Prior to that, we offered fixed wing under the HeliX brand, a fixed wing and helicopters. We also have an RSC and an AOC under our company called HeliX Charters. We have a consulting division where we help people to get ROCs and things and air service licenses. A lot of people that are not coming out of aviation struggle to understand exactly what is going on in the aviation environment, understanding the process and everything like that. So then what happens is people start, but they never know how to finish it off, how to get it all the way to the end product. And so we're helping companies. There's quite a few consultants out there, some of them charging astronomical amount of money, and some people are helping. We're trying to be the helpers and not the getting rich quick scheme type of consultants. We also offer quality and safety services. So a lot of times people they have a pilot, they have a CEO, but they don't have the experience and knowledge to do this quality and safety. So then you outsource that post for quality and safety to a service provider, and we help quite a few ROCs in that respect because we have the knowledge of how to do the quality and safety to a good standard that's acceptable by the CAA. What is the cost of an RPL? Well, that depends on who you ask. It costs anywhere between 24 and 30,000 Rand. That depends on who you go to, depends on the medical costs, and depends on your training time. And that's an all-in cost. Some people will start off, you will see a lot of people start off with 10,000 Rand in the on their brochures, and by the time you finished, it's 30,000 Rand because, the radio is separate and this is separate. But in general, 25,000 and above is about a going rate, all included for an RPL. Estimates, RSCs cost about, cash-wise, about 150,000 to do it under a consultation, and the CAA fees and all of that. If you wanted to do it yourself, you could probably get away with 50,000 Rand, but that consultation fee is about 100, and that covers air service license, if required. It covers all 5 phases of the CAA process and then implementation at the end, going for about anywhere between 150 and 300,000 rand. Simon, that's me. I went over time a little bit. Is there any questions from anybody?
Thanks, Rob. No, that's perfect. Yeah, we should open the floor for questions. Please, raise your hands and I'll make Rob aware if you have anything to say, or questions or comments. Question from Quentin. And then
Hi,
after that.
the talk. My question is, as like a research institution, like a university, what type of RSC would we need to get then?
It's a difficult one. I've done some work with the Stellenbosch University already, and I went to the CAA and I asked them what is required, because they're not selling their product, they're not doing this for commercial gain, and the CAA said the research they're doing at any stage can become valid and sold for profit. Those ideas can be sold for profit. And that is why we need to have an RSC, first of all. But they're saying that corporate to commercial, depending on exactly what it is. Each person, and that's the difficult part, is each RSC is built around the need that you want. Quentin, are you at Stellenbosch University?
No, I'm at University of Pretoria.
University of Pretoria. There's a lot of guys in that are. I know that PE University has got an RSC and they did a corporate RSC. They're not selling their services out. They're just doing work for themselves, and the CAA accepted that. But I don't know of any other universities at this stage that have an RSC.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, Colin, next, please.
Hello, I'm Colin Crowders. Just to understand, from what I've heard, is that even if you do work for nothing, say for your buddy who's got a farm, and he uses your work for his business, therefore you also have to do your RSC.
Correct. So if the photos are used from a commercial perspective for commercial gain, then it is needed to be done under the Part 101 with the RPL and the RSC.
Okay. And then the second question is, what's the year-on-year cost for a company that's got the RSC?
So I'm going to take the personnel cost out of it. So we're just talking the paperwork CAA cost for a RSC. It's about 8,000 Rand to renew your RSC once a year. Plus, I think it's just under 1,000 Rand per drone that you have on your RSC. It's not a very expensive exercise. We just did our RSC now in October. I mean, not in October, in July. And we paid, I think it was just under 10,000 Rand for the renewal of the RSC. But there is costs like pilot retraining costs. There are costs like, sorry, I'm just thinking, pilot retraining, course retraining, safety and quality guys have to go every 3 years to go redo their costs. But it's not a very intensive cost to keep maintaining the RSC. As I said, I'm taking the personnel cost out of it. I'm just talking about fees to keep the RSC running. It's about, I'd say, 10,000 Rand CAA fees, and then maybe another 10,000 Rand in other courses for post holders. I'm not talking normal pilots. I'm just talking post holders. Does that make sense, Colin?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Colin. Michelle?
Thanks. Robert, I just have a follow-on question from Quentin's question. In the case, of research, the information, obtained, obviously, it can feed into commercial products and into the development of that. But, research there's also intellectual property, and the intellectual property of that belongs to the university. So I'm wondering, do they take these kind of issues into consideration when they determine that a university would have to apply for either a corporate or a commercial ROC?
Everything is talkable. That's a terrible word. Everything, they will listen to everything that you say. The difficult part is that the CAA don't always understand exactly where and what we're doing. Even drones at the moment, as it's run, when they wrote the laws in 2015, they didn't know how to regulate drones. So they took manned aviation, copy and paste, took out some of the things that really weren't applicable to us, and made other things harder than what is to get for helicopters. So they don't always know exactly how we do. None of the inspectors and the CAA have ever been commercially operating drones. We are often leading them in how they do it. So if you cannot prove to them why you deserve a corporate ROC, they will always push you to have a commercial ROC so that the liability is taken away from them. But I do believe that we could definitely justify corporate ROC work with for that research component and the intellectual property gain that you're getting. I think that most people would understand that. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for that question, Michelle. Jackie.
Thanks. So my question has to do with the PCO, the Pesticide Chemical Operators License. Robert, from your knowledge, are there qualified PCOs that are able to fly drones? And because we get conflicting information coming to us, I'm in the pesticide industry. So at the moment, like TIPWIG does not endorse any drone application of pesticides at all because there has been conflicting information, which now I understand why, because you're saying there actually isn't a standard. So yeah, two parts to the question. Like, number one, to your knowledge, is there anybody who has a PCO? And number two, do we have to then approach the department, I assume the registrar, to then request what the standards are for that 6-month internship?
That would be so. First things first, there are drone pilots that have PCOs.
Okay.
To be honest, most of them are helicopter pilots or fixed-wing agricultural pilots that have a drone license that now have a PCO because they had the operator before. I know of a few companies that have got just RPL PCO licenses. The one of my students that did his RPL with me has been working for 5 months now. Next month he will have his PCO license, and he literally had to take 6 months of work, normal work, and go and work with this guy every day for free, and he paid for the guy to help him. It's a little bit over the top to be able to get it, but unfortunately it is what it is. I do believe that if the pesticide control industry had to go to the regulators of the pesticide and the PCO training and try and at least get an idea of where they can put down hard and fast rules, because they say 6 months. But can I go once a week for 2 hours? And is that enough? My helicopter business only does pesticide mixing at sunrise, and then they fly it finished, and then it's done. So do I have to go every morning at 5 in the morning to go and mix pesticides, or can I do other types of work? So it's very difficult for us to be able to know exactly what's required.
Okay, thank you.
But if you guys could take them on and get some ideas of how we can help it, the drone industry really is wanting to do that application. We're not going to be able to take over helicopters and fixed wing work because the scope is sometimes just too big. But we can definitely help with niche products, niche markets, smaller farming areas, and we've now incorporating drones into our. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, my computer just went a bit funny. Our helicopter business is incorporating drones into it because sometimes it's too expensive to fly the helicopter the 100 kilometers to go and fly 10 hectares. So you send the drone in a bucky and it saves everybody costs and everybody's happy at the end of the day. So there's definitely a hole for both of them in the industry as we see it.
No, absolutely. I mean, we definitely see that there is plenty of scope for the drones, but there has been this hiccup. And up until now, it's been difficult to identify where it is. So I really appreciate that you've made that clear because now we can actually follow up that one thing. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Last thing on that is up until about 6 months ago, they were issuing RSCs without PCO requirements. And in the last 6 months, the CAA has changed. So that might be where the conflicting information came from, is that before you got your agricultural spray without the PCO, and now they're telling everybody you can't do spraying without the PCO. So that's maybe where the confliction came in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Cool.
Fantastic. Thank you. This has been a very good discussion. Are there any more questions before we take a quick break? Isn't. Bruce.
Yeah, just to comment, I think it just really highlights, or the discussion here really highlights the need for, for the whole sector to try to come together a little bit and to be properly represented against these boards and bodies and things and try and find a good solution for forestry. So that I think we found the same with the other courses that we held. That's something that we really need to take forward